Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's Moneytree Mastery Property Show. It's amazing to have you with us. Excuse my backdrop, but our dream team housekeepers are in this morning, and I had to change location very quickly because they just changed rooms. So I have got Maisie, the cockapoo. Oh, that's probably not quite an elegant pose.
That's hygiene, that is. Hygiene.
No,
Right on
or maybe
cue.
I'll do that, and then you can't actually see what she did. My goodness, of all the times to do that, I'm right there.
You ladies, cool.
This is what sort of family she comes from.
Well, we don't want to go into that, do we?
But it's amazing to have you here. Yeah, lovely to see you. Welcome back for this week's show, and welcome to Thomas as well, who's listening in the background there. Fab, Thomas, to have you here with us. Yeah, we've got lots to talk about this week. As normal, the ever-changing property world. Oh my goodness. But before we get into that,
You
let's
bombshells.
yeah, let's just see how are we. So, Mr. Dobson, I'm going to ask you this every week. What is new in your world? And it can't be property related.
Oh my word. Oh my word. So what's new in my world? All of a sudden, as of yesterday, I've got to find a new car. So that's new. And so have you. I don't know if I told you that. You've got to find
Yes,
one as well.
yes, I know.
So
Yeah,
yeah, a year ago, almost to the month, we leased a couple of cars on a very, very, very good deal from the ex dealership that I worked at for 20 years, who, when there's a really good deal comes up, they don't even ask me, just tell me they've ordered a car for me, because I'm not that bothered about what I drive. It's all down to price really, and what I can get for the money. So the deal was so good, Jackie decided she didn't want to be left out, so we had two of them. Um, and the plan was that they're so good and such a good deal, we thought we'd extend them, which we've always done in the past if we've liked something that much. But they've changed their policy and they won't extend it unless you've ordered a new car from them.
I know the little devils.
So that's not happening. So we've got a month to find something and get going again.
That's
So
fine.
so that's new.
Yeah.
Although my mate, who's still the director of Salmons, he's worked there. Cool, he started 2 years over after me. So he's been there since 1983. So yeah, he's part of the furniture. But if ever there's a good deal come up, he messaged me straight away, and he's just before we come on air, he messaged me with a good deal. So we'll go and investigate that and see if that works for us. But that's all that's new outside of property. My golf isn't getting any better.
No, playing
No,
more of it though.
I've been playing more of it, and the view to everyone says the more you play, the better you get. But I disagree with that completely. That's not happening. In fact, more often than not, my first nine holes is better than my second nine. So perhaps I've got stamina issues.
No comment.
Oh, 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 that's below the belt.
And how's the fitness going? Oh, it's nothing. Tumbleweed.
Sorry, the screen's frozen. Sorry.
So I've
Um, so
started.
I've been to the gym, I think, 3 times this year.
Yeah. Now I'm in week 2 of Couch to 5K. Liking that. It's very relaxed.
Well, I can tell you why. I might have said this before, why I don't go to the gym for the first 6 weeks of the year. Because it's full of these people that have just joined with a New Year's resolution and spend most of the time looking at themselves in the mirror thinking, oh, look at all that muscle definition I've now got. I've been coming twice and I just don't want to be around those people. So I usually give it 6 weeks before I kick back in, but I'm struggling to get going. I don't know why.
So this is the week. This is the week then, is it?
But the
This
good news is that I'm back to my fighting weight that I was about at the beginning of December. I did put on a bit of timber during December and January, but I'm now back to my fighting weight.
Marvelous.
So if anyone
Marvelous.
wants to fight, I'm ready.
So my couch to 5K, I'm in week two,
Well
um,
done.
which is really good actually. It's really I used to run ages ago. Actually, I think it was through lockdown, didn't I take up running when we
Yeah.
lived in Nayland, because it's beautiful countryside. I run for like 5 miles.
Well, you were looking for a way to escape me, really.
Well, yeah, there was that. So five miles running, I think was my maximum. But yeah, we moved to West Burgo. I stopped running, but I thought I'd take it up again. So I thought I'd do couch to 5K. It's really nice, really gentle. So week two, um, intervals of 90 seconds of running, 2 minutes of walking. Can definitely do that. It just feels really nice because I'm not putting any pressure on myself. Dog comes out with me as well. She's sort of liking it. Yeah, so that's my new challenge is couch to 5K. So I don't know if anybody else has got any new challenges they want to put in the chat for Feb for this coming new year or this new year, not the coming new year, this actual new year. Any new challenges from anybody? Be nice to know if you want to put things in the chat, whether it is you have just started that new gym membership. How is that going for you?
Yeah, if you are one of
Or
those
if it's
people that
just
get in my way,
or something completely new. So Anne-Marie has just put walking. Yeah, I walk the dog 3 miles every day, minimum 3 miles at weekends, sometimes a little bit
I
longer.
don't know if you track anything on the apps. I do because I've got the exercise app, that tracks everything, and I'm actually burning more calories, doing more minutes exercise, and more walking per day than I was last year. So although I haven't been at the gym,
That's
I'm
good.
still getting out there. Yeah.
It's funny actually you should talk about tracking. That's a really good subject topic because I have been following Stephen Bartlett Hart, my little crush, my little unsecret crush of Stephen Bartlett. I bought into his 1% diary about just tracking your goals, trying to do things 1% better every single day, which is how I got from the couch to 5K because I did realize that Netflix was starting to take over my life and that I could potentially get up and walk around a bit more. And just how writing down your goals and actually, the act of putting it from an idea onto a piece of paper, how that's then it's in your whatever you call it, peripheral, your perception. What's
And
it called?
subconsciousness and all that,
Yes, it's actually
all of
there,
that.
implanted because you've actually taken it from your head and put it on a piece of paper. And then you're just more aware of that thing that you want to do. So, yeah, that's very interesting how I've always read about writing your goals down. And it's actually the writing that then it makes it actually come into your scope, your vision. Yeah, so that's something very interesting, even though I've spoken about it or read about it for the last few years since really getting into property investing and working on mindset and all of, doing things differently that I've never really thought how that actually does change your thought process. So that's just something
Dave
interesting I just sort
Brailsford.
of throw in there.
That's the Dave Brailsford philosophy, the guy who turned around British cycling. It's not well,
Yes,
so he it's not about making big changes, it's about
absolutely.
making a lot of little changes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And he
Yeah,
hasn't
And
done
he
it
too
turned
really
badly.
British
is.
cycling right round, didn't he? He was
Yeah,
phenomenal. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really does work. I've found that it really does make a difference because it's just in your subconscious, it's there. So I'll stop bleating on about my love for Stephen Bartlett.
I think my ex-love is helping you with your couch to 5K.
Oh, what, Denise?
What,
Denise
making
Lewis.
sure you do it. That's
Denise Lewis is helping you out, I think.
Yeah, on the app, you had a choice of people who would help you do your couch to 5K for like inspiration and motivation. And Denise came up, and so I was like, well, obviously it's got to be her because that was Neil's crush when he was a teenager. So I was like, well, it's got to be
He
her.
was, still is.
Well, yeah, I always say that's your girlfriend on the telly.
Oh, I don't know.
Actually,
Got a lot of fun we have in our house.
on
Eh?
that subject of inspiration, I'm going to throw something at Neil now. I do know who the
That
answer
makes a change.
but but we've had a little bit of sad news this week for somebody who inspired us greatly to make changes in our life. I'll hand over to Neil, but we just want to pay tribute really, just for a few minutes to somebody who we first came across 2018, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Who sadly has passed away after a long battle with cancer. But yeah, we just wanted to speak a little bit about sort of people that inspire us and yeah, about the impact of having the right people around you. I'll let you take the floor, Dobby. Off you go.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone knows how we actually got the property bug, but it all came about. I used to sit outside the house smoking a cigar and flicking through Facebook years ago, and this advert come up about a 2 hour free workshop on property just around the corner from where we lived. So I registered us both for it because we've always been, focused a little bit on property, but not as a business or not as a serious business venture. So we went to this 2 hour event, and before I knew it, Jackie had run at the back of the room with a credit card in hand, waving it around. I'm in, and that's £1,000 gone for the 3 day event. So we signed up to the boot camp, and this is really where I went from, yeah, it's quite fun to go to a 2 hour event to events, sitting in on this 3 days, absolutely sort of captivated, really. Again, for those that you don't know me, I cannot sit still without being an idiot. So a classroom environment to me is just hell on earth. I can't be in that type of environment for very long without getting bored and irritating other people and distracting everything. So, but this 3 day event, to be fair, I thought we'd been scammed. I thought we were going to walk into the hotel room in London and there was going to be nobody in there, but there was. There's a room full of people, just like us that are starting out or thinking about starting out. And we had 3 days with a gentleman called Dr. Rohan Veerasinghe. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of him or coming. I know Andy has, and I think Andy's got mixed opinions about him, but um, to me, his energy and his delivery and his passion, his desire to sort of, I know it's all sales pitch. They're all trying to get you sign up for the next thing, but um, it was very much a huge influence on me because to me, he made it believable. He come across like anyone can do it. You've only got to follow the process, put the work in, and you can achieve it. And he actually managed to get me to sit still for 3 whole days, mesmerized, taking notes, doing everything that I don't normally do. Normally, I'd have a ruler out and start hitting people around the back of the head or something. But yeah, I was captivated and mesmerized, and to some extent in awe of him and his achievement and his desire and his drive and where he's going to go next. And his actual goal at that point, this was 2018, quite early in 2018. His goal at that point was to have one of the first Teslas in the country. Because you think they've been around forever now, don't you? But it was 2018 where they really sort of started to hit the UK in with some impact. And he did achieve it. He got a Tesla that year, which was, to be fair, I hadn't even heard of Tesla in 2018 until he mentioned it. Uh, the ironic thing about his unfortunate demise is that he was the most healthy living person I've ever come across. And the inspiration behind that was his father died young. So he was definitely, his mindset was not going to happen to me. And he was vegan, wasn't he? And every break he'd have some sort of, I don't know, spinach drink or something that looked absolutely revolting and he lived the most healthy life. But obviously, as we all know, cancer can hurt anyone. And even during his cancer, he's putting out posts and updates and everything and, GoFundMe stuff to try and get funding for research and everything. So yeah, he was there to sell us the dream and get us to buy into the next package, which we did because Jackie ran out. She wrote back of the room again. I think I was distracted again waving a few credit cards about this time because it's a big number. So it was 25k, wasn't it? We spent that day across numerous credit cards, but never looked back really. And you know, if the wrong person was at the front of the room, I don't think we'd have bought in. So he was a huge influence on me personally, and I think Jackie will back that up, was on you as well. Um, but yeah, it's not for everyone, but for us, he was the one that really convinced me that investing in ourselves was the right thing to do at that point. And I think he's been proved right.
Absolutely. He was yeah, just that whole environment of being in, we'd never experienced actually anything like that before. I don't know if you remember being in, just being in a boot camp. We were like, we don't really know what this is. Never experienced uh, being like witnessing keynote speakers, motivational speakers, never ever been around anybody like that
Actually,
before.
talking about motivational speakers, we had the pleasure of Dr. John DeMartini coming in and doing a presentation during those 3 days. And I don't know if any of you ever heard him speak, but it's really weird because the first few minutes I'm thinking, oh, this gentleman's so dull. He's the dullest bloke on the planet, but he gradually drew you in and he built up and built up and built up momentum, and then it was boom. And again, fantastic. Because he lived in Trump Tower and all that, and he's incredibly successful and wealthy. But at the beginning, I'm thinking, who is this chap, this American chap who's just really quite boring to start with, wasn't he? Until he got to the point, and he was, yeah, it was a phenomenal experience listening to
Yeah,
him.
he's a
And we
great.
went back to see him last year, actually,
You
in
did, and
Cheltenham.
we got to meet him as well,
Yeah.
which was amazing. So we had highlights of last year. Definitely, obviously, got to shake the hand of Mr. Stephen Bartlett,
Yeah,
and
we spoke on the same stage as him.
oh yeah, and we shared a stage with him as well when we spoke in front of 500 people. Yeah, and meeting Dr. John DeMartini as well, and listening to him being part of the audience as well. So yeah, we would never, if we hadn't got into property investing and got into this world of knowledge sharing, and that it just, we would never have met these people. So it's amazing for us to
And it is
be in
hugely
this
important that
environment.
you mix with the right people, rub shoulders with the right people, and you're in the right environment to be successful in property. Because if you go down the pub, everybody's an expert on property, everybody, and the uneducated listen to them. That's the trouble. So yeah, it's important that you surround yourself with the right people and you're in the right environments.
100%. And I would just like to say as well, because we've got Nigel, Anne-Marie, and Andy on the call with us today, who are in our mentorship group. And I just want to say that Tuesday evening, our weekly call was just fabulous. So grateful that you're on our program. It's just amazing. Honestly, it gives me goosebumps just hearing about your achievements, catching up with you week on week, and just watching the different things that you're doing and the steps that you're taking. So yeah, it's an absolutely buzz to be part of this journey with you. So I'd just like to say thank you to you guys.
I've just been singing your praises. So someone else on the same group that Anne Marie and myself met reached out to me. So I've just been talking to him. So virtually a lot of people you talk to in property, they've done all the training, they've spent all the money, and said, well, why isn't it happening? So I talked about what Anne Marie and myself are doing. So hopefully she will join one of these calls.
Oh,
So I've mentioned
fabulous.
Mandy Hall. So notice that. So at some stage, maybe next week. So I was singing your praises because I was saying this is the type of strategy we're following. So I said these guys have done this, and it's because she's, as a lot of people are, starting out in sourcing, doesn't really. She's done some of the courses, she spent some of the money, and everywhere you go, they say, give us 15 grand, give us 20 grand, and So I said, be very careful. This, and then
Yeah.
explained what we're doing.
Yeah, I
Wonderful. Thank you
think
for
where
that,
we differ.
Nigel.
So yeah, I really appreciate that. But I think where we differ slightly is, and we witness this because we're subcontracted by a property education company, is that you're just a number in there. There's no one to one, and it's all module based. But you need to be able
That's
to.
what I said. So I said I said that that group that how they introduced me to you, effectively, you guys.
Yes.
That there's lots of these groups, and you can name probably five, 10 of them, that what they do is they're very good at selling, and it's always free or very cheap to start with, and it's always a 15, 20K, and
Yeah.
today we'll do it for a little bit less or whatever. So, and
Yes.
I
Yeah.
said, but what they don't give you is that one-to-one. So I explained what we were, effectively what we're doing.
And yet then
Wonderful.
the joy we get out of it, especially having the weekly calls now, because it was fortnightly at the beginning, was it? But we
Yeah.
decided we wanted to give a bit more value and to some extent a bit more accountability, because if you set weekly goals and you've got to touch base in a week time, you're more likely to do something rather than come on camera and say, well, actually, I've been sat on my arse all week, I've done nothing. And we can hand on heart say that everybody is moving in the right direction. We've got a great group because they're all action takers.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
yeah, it makes it so pleasurable.
It does. Okay. Right. Let's have a little bit of structure now. I've had to chit chat.
Yes.
So, Neil, I know you've been doing some preparation for this call today because there is so much
Oh,
going on in the world of property at the moment. Oh my
have
God,
I?
there is so much. So, we have our fingers in many property pies, doing many different strategies. And so we are seeing it from all
Oh
angles,
yeah, there's some
all
good, there's some
angles at the
bad, there's some
moment.
indifferent, there's all
Um,
sorts going on,
we're
yeah.
we're pivoting some of our essay into rentals. We've had a conversation about creating an HMO this morning with a letting agent. So yeah, we're just throwing everything at it at the moment. So Neil, the news. If I only had some sound effect that I could do an
The
intro.
news. Right,
But
yeah,
yeah, if you could hit us with what is going on in the world of property at the moment, what are the headlines?
well, really interestingly, well, it's not that surprising, but it's quite interesting that property sales surged by 15% in January, obviously a result of the stamp duty land tax increasing on the 1st of April, where everyone's trying to find their forever home and get in before the stamp duty rise. And again, I think we said last year, touched on last week, sorry, that when you get to bigger numbers, the stamp duty increase isn't that much. It's not a make or break on a deal. So that's quite interesting. And new listings rose by 8%. So that obviously means that there's a few properties that have been kicking about on Rightmove, etc., for quite a while have now gone sold subject to contract. So that's good to get rid of some old stock. And this is interesting. 13% of all new listings are landlords trying to exit the rental market. 13%. That's private landlords. So that's quite an incredible figure, really. And in 1 month, 13% of all new listings are landlords trying to exit the property market, the residential property market from a rental point of view. So that's incredible. Obviously, disappointing news yesterday, both for property and our own pockets on a daily, weekly basis, is the rise in inflation figures. So they've gone into up to 3%, which obviously I think is going to halt any potentially impending interest by Bank of England base rate cuts. So I think they'll be stalled now for a little while. So don't build your hopes up on another base rate cut in 6 weeks' time, because I don't think it's going to happen. Hope I'm proved wrong. I like to be wrong now and again. I'm quite often told I'm wrong. And yeah, so and again, it's quite interesting that sales are up. Most of them are private individuals buying, but yet the high street lenders have started a price war. So the big boys, so the Halifax, your HSBCs, your Barclays, your high street bread and butter lenders are in a price war, and they've actually got products out there below 4% now. So if you want to go and buy a house, you can get a mortgage below 4%. Obviously not in a limited company, but so that's good news for those people. But once they're got sufficient, or they're snowed under by new applications, they'll obviously put the rates up to stem the flow so they can catch up. So the only negative about cutting the rates that low is they might the conveyancing period might go longer and longer and longer while they plough through all the paperwork for each application. So you need to be aware of that as well.
That's a good point, actually. The more obviously sales there is, the longer conveyance is going to take, and especially if the mortgage products, then if people are needing mortgages, then the mortgage companies are actually gonna maybe hike up mortgage interest rates to stem the flow of business that they've got. So it'll be interesting to see again now with what's just been announced with the interest rate hike, whether or not then that actually causes, fluctuations with mortgage companies and with themselves, with them stemming the flow of business. Who knows? So we'll have to watch this space and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean that's basically how they control their workload. Is they'll move the rates, the mortgage rates up and down to control their workflow, really. But quite often, when they aim to review an application within 5 working days. If they're snowed under, that could be 10, 15 working days. So it all holds up conveyancing and mortgage approvals and everything. So yeah, there's always an impact, isn't there?
Definitely. Definitely.
But the other really news, which is something I think you want to focus on today, is the EPC, our lovely friend Ed Miliband.
Oh my goodness. I know.
Go
If
on,
it's
get it
just
out your
not
system. Go
if
on.
it's not one thing, it's another. So obviously they've got the renters' rights bill coming imminently. Still not 100% decision on exactly what that looks like, but we're keeping our ear to the ground with the changes that affect us as landlords. We're also tenants as well, so it's quite interesting. We sit on this fence of thinking, oh, great, like everything's in our favor, but then we're sitting on the other side of as landlords and thinking, oh my God, what is this going to create for us as landlords? So we know that we're protected, so we could play the game to a T because know we know quite a lot about the renters' rights bill. Yeah, so it's an interesting time.
Before
Um,
you get into that,
yes,
I think we touched on something last week, and we were given incorrect information. So I just want to put it right
okay,
because we've been to two meetings recently, one last week and one about 4 or 5 weeks before that, that stated, for instance, if you've got a tenant that's paying below market rent, say he's paying they're paying £1,000, but the actual market rent is 1,200, and the landlord says, well, I'll be nice to them. I'll put it up to 1,100, not 1,200. We were told that if they appealed that and it went to the body for, the ombudsman or whoever to review it, they could actually say, well, actually, 1,100 is not the right rate. You need to be paying 1,200. But we've been corrected last Thursday on another meeting, that actually that has been reversed. So they'll only pay what you request. So if you are looking to put a rent up, make sure you put it up or propose to put it up to market rent, because they will never put it above what you request, basically. So I just want to clear that up. And I've read it on the proposed renters' right bill as well, and they've clarified it on there as well now. So we were
oh
given
good, because that was
incorrect
actually
information.
a lady from Shelter
Yeah, it
who
was. Yeah,
told us the
who got
incorrect
a particularly hard
information.
time that day.
She did, yeah. I thought she was very brave, standing in a
Yeah.
room in front of landlords. But hey ho, yeah.
A
So
lot of
the
them were
big
old school as well, weren't
they
they?
were. So the big news, EPCs. Now we have got a EPC assessor actually within our mentorship program, but he hasn't yet fully started with us. But because well, we know the reason why he hasn't fully started with us just yet is because he is so snowed under with doing EP assessments that he just can't find the time to actually turn up for any of the calls, or hasn't got the time to do the work at the moment because he is rammed full of these EP assessments. There is
The assessment.
massive changes afoot. Um, Steve is going to speak about EPCs. I think you got some information to share with us. But so the changes to EPC at the moment, rental properties need to be at least an E to be a rental property. The changes are that they're going to need to be a C, which from our point of view as landlords is like, how is that going to happen? Most of our properties are a D, and then they're sort of like, we can't see any way of really getting them any better than they are now without removing the tenant and actually doing a lot of work on that property, which isn't going to be cost effective for us to do it. So for a landlord in that position, the easiest thing for us to do is basically sell the portfolio of those that are on the D's or less and just start again, and then buy those properties that are now going to come on for sale that can't meet, or the owner doesn't want to do the work. And then we can buy up those and then do the refurbs and then make them hopefully into the C grade that we need for them to be rental properties. So the proposal is that by 2028, any new tenancy agreements, the property has to be a C grade on the EPC. By 2030, all tenancies, so that's existing ones, need to be a C. So I don't know how that's going to be achievable for most people. They're telling us that so you can get an exemption for an EPC, but you have to have done a certain amount of work on it to try to increase the EPC, which they're suggesting about £10,000. So if you've got a
Oh,
portfolio
I'm
of
not sure it's
property,
that high.
well, there's a
Yeah,
suggested
there
figure,
is.
and
Yeah,
it's
there is. Yeah.
more than, is actually feasible. It's
Just
more
put
than,
that into context because realistically, on say a two, three-bed terraced house in the areas we invest, the annual total cash flow is probably between 4 and 6 thousand per property, isn't it? The net cash flow. So if you're going to have to spend sort of up to 10 grand trying to reach a C, you're wiping out 2 years cash flow. And what business would do that?
yeah, it's
At
mental.
the end of the
And
day,
that's
we're
on
running a
multiple
business.
properties as
Yeah.
well. And the other spanner in the works is that there's going to be new guidelines. So it's not as if the guidelines that are here at the moment can be met, because next year in 2026, the guidelines are going to change. So we're going to have all these changes to these new guidelines, which haven't yet been released. So the only option at this moment is to do some work. So if you've got a D property, try and get it to a C. If you get that C grade, then do it now, because the EPC actually lasts for 10 years. But then obviously when that 10 years is up, then you're gonna need to have it done again. But yeah, it's just another spanner, something else to throw at landlords, another reason for landlords to exit the market. Yeah, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. Go on,
But
Nigel.
I only unmuted myself. But yeah, no, I was thinking, so who's the group of people who will decide if you can be exempt? Is that a
You'll
body?
have to prove that you've done as much as possible. So there will be a limit. They'll expect you to spend a certain amount of money on improvements. And if you still can't get to the required grade, then they'll look at an exemption.
this is where the whole system falls down in my mind, because it is, I mean, and Steve might correct me here, but it is very much to some degree a tick box exercise. If you look at existing EPCs, there's a lot of assumed written on it. You know, no, it were, cavity wall insulation assumed, no loft insulation assumed. But you can't, it can't be that woolly if it's going to affect your landlords that much financially. It really can't. And I've got an example of this. This is one I want to email to you, Steve. Is our new build, we got an EPCD on it, which is just ridiculous, because an identical build that we witnessed, we watched go up, got a B. It was about 3 points short of an A for identical build. two different assessors. One's given ours a D, and they get virtually an A. It was that close to an A. And
Was it a new build or a conversion?
new builds, both new builds, identical build structures.
Because a new build has to be, my understanding is a new build has to be built against a spec that gives you something very close to an A.
Yes, it was, yeah.
So there's something, maybe it's the air tightness, maybe, but the base configuration should give you better than a B in my understanding of it.
Okay, shall we open the floor to Steve?
But I'll just go ask Steve a quick question because I was going to research this, haven't got around to it. Is can you appeal it?
Well, the thing to let me have a quick look at it before you do that, and
Okay.
I'll tell you. So I've not finished my, I'll call it, research on this stuff, but I'm getting there. Okay. But the other thing about a new build is that this is not what this guy is who you mentioned early on is doing all these assessments. He's doing an RD SAP assessment, I guess, which is on existing properties. And yours is a SAP assessment because it's a new build.
Yeah.
And SAP is more of a measured, I'll call it, set of values. Or there's a measurement involved in this RD SAP. It's more or less ticking the boxes. Is it, is it cavity wall? Yes. You need a little bit of, I'll call it, evidence to show that, but there's nothing measured on it. Okay.
No,
on SAP, it is measured.
Could we go into a little bit more detail about what a SAP is? Because I'm sure there's people on this call. Because I just literally heard about SAP just recently when we were.
And what does SAP actually stand for? I've thrown him under the bus.
Standard.
It's the first time I've heard of it. So,
well, RD SAP is a simpler version of SAP. So SAP is measuring the energy efficiency, and RD SAP is reduced data, whatever SAP is, right? Standard assessment procedure, right? Reduced data standard assessment procedure. So what you do with a new build is you build against a specification, and that specification has to be a good specification because it's against current building control regulation. So my best guess at the moment is that I'll call it your air tightness has got a problem, a very big problem. This is what I suspect. And that air tightness is therefore, if you like, saying that you are losing a lot of heat through the fabric. And this is what I suspect has happened to your building. And if this is the case, then it's your builder's fault, right? It's not the specific. It's unlikely to be the specification fault. It's likely to be the main contractor's fault.
Yeah.
This is what I would say. But let me have a look at the numbers. Let me have a look.
I will, but I can throw a bit of light on it, and I'm not pointing the finger at the assessor at all. I know they're very good. They've got a very good reputation, etc. I think that the issue with ours is the criteria when the plan was made. Bearing in mind, Steve, you may not know, but this build has taken about 4 years.
All right. Should still be okay. Should still be okay.
Yes. So basically the conversation was that, okay, it may have met the criteria that you needed to meet 4 years ago, but the goalposts have moved and they doesn't meet what it needs to meet today. So
yeah, the goalposts have just moved, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And the EPC has just been done. So
is it
or the SAP rather?
So an EPC then so it's a bit like an MOT, but it lasts 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you don't, EPCs don't cost that much because you've got to have it on every property. Like 250.
Not an EPC doesn't know, but a SAP assessment does.
Sure, but if you want an EPC, any property, if you want to sell it, you've got to get an EPC. That costs what, 250 quid or something?
No, you get 100 quid.
100 quid. So and it lasts for 10 years. So
Yeah.
it makes
Yeah.
sense then now to go into any property, get an EPC. If you don't like it, get someone else to assess it. It override the previous one.
Well,
Well,
I have had that thought, but
well,
what I was
there's
going to do to start with
yeah,
is
yeah.
show a bit more evidence about the structure. I think that's where it's lacking.
And presumably your builder. So I was going through a similar sort of thing about Grenfell, and if your builder would presumably has to meet the rules and has to show that they've met the rules, including that one, I would have thought, or the
Yeah,
Yeah,
contract, whoever's doing it,
this
someone
is
has.
true for
Because so I just said to Anne Marie this morning, because with all these sort of building controls and people like that, I've been to a presentation about building control and how things have changed after Grenfell. So I said, if you buy a car, an Audi car, something like that, or any car, they can tell you each component in that car, not only where it was
yeah,
built, on what
yeah,
day by the person. And
yeah,
what
yeah,
they've done
absolutely.
apparently after Grenfell, they've applied that thinking to the building industry.
yeah,
So
but
an architect now, as I understand it, with building control, so an architect now has to not only specify this is how you build it, they've got to specify exactly the materials that you're going to use.
Yep,
And also, so the builder, when they build it, have got to follow exactly
yeah,
what the architect has
absolutely,
told them to do. And if
but
they
absolutely.
this
don't, then they can come back and say, because the problem with Grenfell was that everyone said, oh, it's his fault. Yeah. When you're building a car, you know exactly whose fault it was because you know who did it on a particular day. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the building world now, the building regulations have changed such that everyone knows. So is this the responsibility of the architect because he said build with the wrong materials, or is it the responsibility of the builder because he didn't do what the architect says, and it follows the whole process through?
You're
but this
absolutely spot on, and I think you'll find now we've already witnessed one architect that's running scared because the
It's a
responsibility.
huge. Well,
Yeah,
they have to decide they have to define not only which screw down to which screws to use,
yeah.
the size of the screws, which procedure, and this is all stuff that they know about, but they
but
don't necessarily define it. They don't define it in the drawings at them, or they didn't, but they now have to.
Yeah.
it's
Go
a,
on,
it's a
Steve.
little
Sorry.
it's a little more complex if you don't have a main contractor or an architect that's responsible. So, for example, Neil may be doing his own project management for this new build. And if he's doing his own project management, then it can be quite difficult potentially to find the cause of the problem, right? For example, if you've got some form of, you've seen these things where they do a blower test, for example, they stick a fan in the door, right? And when they do that and they're looking for a value, and a low value is good and a high value is not good. And this is going to impact the assessment quite a lot. And if you don't get a good value, then trying to find where the problem is not easy, right? Unless you've had a main contractor, I'll call it, looking after this thing, you've got a difficult problem.
Well, I can let me give you the whole story then.
Oh, we haven't got long enough.
The whole sordid
We
story.
really haven't
So,
got long enough.
no, I'll give you the short version. So this this we bought a plot of land with a non-standard construction bungalow on it, made out of asbestos predominantly, which we demolished, got rid of, and while we were doing that and going through planning, we went and met this build team who built and sold an almost identical property on same size plot and everything in 4 months. So it went up and sold in 4 months. Quality of work every time we turned up. We turned up unannounced numerous times, didn't we? Quality of work was good, speed was good, and all of that stuff. And the price was right. So anyway, we'd already met this quantity surveyor who we'd sourced properties to. And he said, well, how about a joint venture then? We bought the land cash. He said, I'll project manage it because he knew the build team already. I'll project manage it and I'll fund the build. And then we split the profit when we sell it. This is where it all went wrong. Because it went up and watertight and looked beautiful within about 4 months, didn't it? and then it ground to a halt. So none of the internals were done. So I'm chasing a project manager saying, what the hell is going on? He said, oh, it's Mike the builder. He's walked off site. He's got another project he's got to do. It's an emergency. And it kept going on and on and on. And he kept us apart. Till the end, I phoned the builder and said, what the hell is going on? And he said, I haven't been paid.
All right.
So the builder thought it was my money that was paying him.
Yeah.
So he'd got the hump with me. And the joint venture partner was keeping us apart because he didn't want either of us to know the truth behind it. So he'd spent all the money for the build on another project.
Oh dear.
So we ended up funding the build, and I had a lot of work and time getting the builder back on site. But communication now is very difficult. So, you know, but getting true spec and everything out of him is difficult, and
being pieced together, isn't it? And Neil had a whole head of really lovely dark hair when we first started the project.
Something,
that bit's
Now
not
look at
true.
him.
That
something
bit's
else I
not
learned at
true.
the BNI, yeah. So someone else there whose role in life is to sort out these kind of disputes. Yeah. So he did quite a few presentations. He lives just down the road from me. So what he does um he works out, is this a problem with the contractor, whatever, the builder, whoever, he goes to court to present. He's an expert witness. So he showed us um a huge builder in, I think this is in Hampshire, who'd built hundreds and hundreds of houses, and the problems they had further down the road is, there's water coming in from the roof, and it was causing the problems. The residents came to him to say, we've got these problems. He looked into it, and he found out exactly what the problem was. Yeah. And the problem was the builders hadn't built it properly, and he's now built up the case. And this is hundreds of properties. So these are properties with an HSBC certificate, whatever. So he has got all the information together, and he's shown these, you can see, because he looks at how it was built. There's lots of people who have a responsibility, building control, people like that, as when houses are built. His whole role in life is to act on behalf of either the contractor or whoever to work out where the problem lies. He's a really nice guy.
Oh, I don't
I
know if
bet he is,
Andy Tucker wants to come in and got any comments as
I bet he's a really nice
our
guy,
expert.
but he's not a charity, is he?
He's definitely not a charity.
No.
I don't know if Andy has any comments because he is our build expert
Well,
in
Andy's
the
been through a
group.
few bits and pieces as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I actually know a couple of main contractors that are stopping doing it now because nobody wants to take any responsibility. And they are just turning around and saying it's all back to manufacturer's instructions and guidelines for your warranty. But when you go to them, they just put it back on the installer. And the installer is like, there's some things that you can install, but you can't do as per manufacturer's guidelines. You know what I mean? You have to be able to maneuver a little bit on site. And you get the problem then is because it's not being done actually to the proper specification of it. But you've got to maneuver around it. I mean, on that one in Ipswich with the architect who's with Title Split now, I forget his name.
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah, I know his name. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't come to site. They designed it, and I know the people who instructed them to start with paid for the basic package. They didn't pay for the proper full package for the architect. But there was so much on there that you couldn't do as per their drawings. It was just, it was undoable, and they wouldn't come to site. It just ended up in big, massive arguments. And you have to just try and get around it the best way you can to get it through building control and get them to sign it off. It just becomes
So something else I learned as part of this process, which is big notes, which is incredibly useful. So Yeah, so as part of the BNI, there's all the trades, plasterers and all the rest of it. So the plasterer, when they were involved in doing the plastering for this was not a new build, this was a conversion or whatever. So the guy who runs this other company is called Mike Judd, Judd. So he got involved in the initial drawings before they'd done the work. Yeah. So he looked at the initial drawings and he said, "You're going to have a problem with this. You need to do that." So he was paid for doing it, but that's what they did. He got involved to make sure that further down the right line, it's less likely that there were going to be problems. So he looked at the drawings and it was like, I suggest you do this, you talk to that, and I take, you should make this the responsibility of this person.
But going back to what
Yeah.
Andy said, because I know the building he's talking about, and if an architect doesn't come to site, how can he really, from any historic drawings, floor plans, etc., gauge real positioning of beams, height of beams, that sort of thing? Because I think that was one of the issues you had, wasn't it? Doorways weren't.
Wide enough.
Yeah, one of the issues that we had on there was, well, there was two main issues really. One one was he'd designed the steel to go in and to create a doorway in from one flat to another. It was a big double fronted house that was being converted into 5 flats. But he hadn't taken into consideration the floor levels were at two different heights. So if we're to put the steel in at the height that he originally said, the floor in the next room below would have had no support because the joists are sat on the wall underneath it. So the steel's here supporting this wall, but in the room next, where the joists were coming through and sitting on the wall here, this wall's coming out to create the opening. That room there, the floor falls down. So like,
Whose responsibility is that then?
That's the
what's that?
architect.
Whose responsibility do you think that is then?
Well, it's the architect. Well, but the architect's argument was you don't want to pay for a full package. You didn't want us to come to site, so they done their drawing from a walk around video that was done, and
My
they
understanding
paid
is an
somebody.
architect can't now say that.
Yeah, but that's what they
Yeah.
said.
So then, so I mean,
What
That's
I'm
a-
actually going to do at this point is just say to Thomas, is this your area of expertise? Have you got anything to add? Are you able to unmute and talk?
oh,
I
hello,
can
Thomas.
talk. Hello, hello.
Hello.
I can talk. I'm front office, so I've snuck on this one because I had an hour spare. Yeah. Interesting. The EPC regulations. It is still going through consultation.
It is, yeah.
The actual amount that is being bandied around is £15,000 worth of repairs,
Wow.
Yeah.
which
It
is quite a lot of money. Probably more up north than it is down south. And over that point, you can then apply for an EPC exemption certificate.
It's £15,000 on it, or on our
£15,000.
portfolio, on each property in our portfolio. Well, it's like sell them.
Yeah, and I've been in the rental game for a long time. It does differ between EPC assessor.
Yeah,
You
it does.
you can have one out and then another out saying what the issue is. Do you think it will make a difference? And they would pass it because there are so many assumptions that they make.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank
So where are
you.
you based, Thomas?
I'm Colchester.
Oh, yeah.
But
You're lettings, aren't you? You're lettings.
I'm lettings. Yeah.
How do you know that then?
Yeah, because me and Tom have spoken.
Have you?
Yes,
Interesting.
he knows Liam, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
What, my
Take it with
son,
Liam.
Liam.
Yeah.
Oh, do you?
And Ross.
You turned up. Fantastic.
So it's thank you, Tom. So
Yeah, thanks for coming along. Yeah.
we've just got a few minutes left. So just from Andy and from Steve as well. So Andy on sort of like building what sort of new build, and from what your sort of experience have been over the last couple of years with the changes, what would your best sort of 3 pieces of advice to be when going for a new build? And Steve, from EPC point of view, what would your best 3 pieces of advice be? Steve's unmuted, so let's go for Steve first.
Oh, what I would say, I might only be able to give you one today. But that is, I think that the main piece of advice I'd give you is to own the data. So the guy's got to go along and tick everything and say this is his set of measurements and assumptions. But you have to own that. You have to look at that and agree with it fundamentally. So you have to, I'll call it, do your own validation of the numbers that he's going to put into the
Yeah.
software to calculate this EPC. That would be the main piece of advice I'd give. Because for example, he's going to measure the thickness of the walls if he can, and he's going to say it's got a cavity or it hasn't, and if he says it's as built, the as built goes to the date that the building was put up. So the date of the building is actually quite important as well, because this is something he's going to estimate, right? And you fundamentally, if he's going to say this is a later date than it actually was, then this is probably a good thing. But you still need to own that data. You need to know that what he's putting in is going to be a fair reflection or better than reality.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I would say as a piece of advice.
Perfect. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you very much. And Andy, over to you.
I think I'd advise you to, like anything, you pay for what you get. So I would advise people to actually spend the money and the time with their architect to actually get the whole project down properly. And don't spend like a few days. I would spend weeks over it, and get the whole thing nailed on day one.
Yeah.
And also, I wouldn't go with the local council's building control teams. I'd outsource it to a main, because you've got special companies out there that will take over and they will run it for you.
Yeah.
And you can deal with them and they will pass it, because the problem you've got with building control is if it's not in their book that's on their desk, then it don't exist, and you can't do it that way, because the book says it has to be done like this, and they're not up to date with all the current rules and regulations, and you've got a lot of old school people there, and you've got and I know from experience, because I've dealt with them before, where they won't even come to site. They do everything off of a photo. And photos, as you know, you can make photos work a million times in your favor. You can make the best property look really shit because you want a good price off of it, and you can make a shit thing look really good.
Yeah.
And if they're not going to come down and assess it properly, and they're happy to do it off of photos, it's just passing the buck.
So the regulations for building control building, they're enforced now, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So are all building control people, because they had to go through some further training, are all of them up to that spec now, or are some not being trained? And it doesn't
I
matter
don't think they're all up to that spec.
No, this is the issue. We
And
always
there is a lot of backhanders still goes on.
Yeah.
Clerk
We
of
always use
Works.
a company called Stroma rather than the council's building control, because you'll find the council's building control, they're nervous of getting it wrong because of the backlash, and they're not up to speed. They're not up to speed with the latest specs, the latest guidelines, because they just sit and, they've got no real responsibility to remain up to date and educated, do they? Have they? Whereas if it's your own company, your own building control, you want to be bang up to speed, don't you? Because you need the repeat business, etc., and you want to, by reputation, be the people to go to.
Thank you. Okay, we've come to the end of the show. Can you believe it? An hour has passed. There's always so much to discuss
There is.
in these hours. There's continual changes. But as being property investors, that's something that we just have to deal with. We have to be looking at, the changes in legislation, whether it's building properties or taking on tenants. So just like to thank you all again for spending this last hour with us. I hope you found the information informative. If you want to catch up with each other, let me know if you want email addresses. Thumbs up to everybody if you're happy for me to share all your details. Superb. Yeah, if you want to get hold of Andy, he's our expert build team. Steve's actually still in Germany, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Steve
right.
there. Nigel and Anne-Marie are sourcing property, so their company is Property Table. Neil and I, we just are property through and through, mentors,
Cut me
tenants.
open, yeah.
Yeah, landlords, do all sorts of things, have fingers in all sorts of pies. So yeah, if you want to catch up with us, please do. If you haven't yet joined our WhatsApp group, but then do that. I'll put the link in the chat, and we will see you same time,
Well, very, very quickly,
same
Nigel,
place next week.
Was that Mandy Hall, did you say?
Ah, yes.
Yeah, she's just followed us on Instagram, so that's
Oh,
good.
yeah. See, it
Oh,
works.
cool.
It
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, so we're on Facebook, on Instagram, LinkedIn. I have actually
Well,
just created a newsletter on LinkedIn. So if you want to head over that, that was all about the Renters' Rights Bill. I am going to be doing the next one on the changes to the EPC, and there'll be other stuff as the legislation changes. So that's a bi-weekly newsletter, and that's on LinkedIn. So yeah, same place, same time next
and
week,
yeah, and
Thursday,
there's
12:30.
Is
yeah.
Tom going
And
next Wednesday?
And Wednesday evening is networking. Yeah, Tom, if you want to come along to networking, then we'll be at the Cricketers Inn on Wednesday evening. Feel free to come along to that.
Yep, I'll stick it in my diary.
Perfect.
Lovely.
Lovely.
Fabulous.
Obviously, there's still a big opportunity to earn some money out of referrals. £500 if you refer someone to us and they sign up for one of our programs. So yeah, all that is passing on their details if you think they're a good fit, and we, as in vice versa, we're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for us, and
Yeah.
they'll slip nicely into our mentorship group. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, so look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday, if not before,
Amazing. Thank you
or
Thank
so
next
you.
Thursday for those in Germany.
much.
Brilliant. Have a
Thank
good
you.
week.
Bye bye.
Cheers.